Okay, thank you and welcome. My name is Nicole Alvino. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer at SocialChorus. I am thrilled to be joined by our partners and friends at Gagen MacDonald. So we have Molly and Alexis. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute. But first, just for some housekeeping, please, we want this to be interactive. We have a lot of great content to share with you, but we do want you to ask questions. So there's a Q&A in the bottom part of your Zoom where you can type questions. We'll do our best to get to all of those. If not, we can follow up. We will be recording this session, and this session will be made available after for you to look back on, or for colleagues who were unable to attend. So use the Q&A button, and I will let Molly first introduce herself. Thanks for joining us, Molly.
Thank you so much, Nicole. We're so thrilled to be here with you. For many of you who may not have come across Gagen MacDonald, we're a strategy execution firm, and we focus on business and digital transformation, especially in the area of the human struggle of change. So we help clients with culture, employee engagement, internal communications, and change management. And I am the CIO of the firm, as well as a managing director, and my history has been out of IT. So I was the CIO for the City and County of Denver and for the Denver International Airport. So thrilled to be here. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Alexis.
Yeah, super excited to be here. So I have over 15 years experience in the creative field. I've been with Gagen MacDonald for a little over 7. I lead the creative team there, where we partner really closely with our consultants and our clients to help bring their strategic vision to life through creative experiences. So that could be developing intranets or a communication app, or helping implement it, as well as helping support adoption or engagement for new or existing tools. So my team and I were just really passionate about the employee experience and helping them through the human struggle of change.
Great. The human struggle of change. I think we are all facing some element of the human struggle of change. So again, thrilled to have everyone here. We're going to address the hardest to reach, how we take those hardest to reach employees, core members of our workforce, and help them to be engaged. At SocialChorus, we've always had a founding principle that every worker is important. We must reach and engage and align every single worker in order to help them feel more closely connected to the company and drive the company forward. So to kick us off, we formerly, pre-COVID, thought of the hardest to reach workforce as the deskless. So maybe not everyone knows, but 80% of the global workforce is not in front of a desk. So it's actually the vast majority of the global workforce. COVID showed us that we have this whole other category of workers, the furloughed. So over 30 million workers in the US and over 18 in Europe have been furloughed, which presents a whole other host of challenges. And then for those of us who are used to being in offices, 95% of traditional office workers are now remote. So that presents an added challenge beyond the deskless workforce. So Alexis, what are some of the challenges that you've seen your clients face specifically from COVID?
Yeah, so, we've been hearing from our clients the challenge of reaching all employees since Gagen started over 20 years ago. But now with COVID, it really spotlighted it and made it a crisis. So, with the possible second wave coming, we were just really looking to support our clients and help them through learning, from some of the challenges that they went through the first time, and then being prepared and, getting it right if the second one comes. So That's one challenge. The other is, again, it was a challenge before the pandemic, which is working virtually and creating that unified, authentic connection to the, all employees. So now I think it's really important, and a challenge that they're facing is how do we create the opportunity to really listen and hear employees, understand what they're feeling during all these changes and the uncertainty.
Yes, that is great. And I think, Core, we're going to start with a poll. We'd love to hear from everyone around, do you have a way to securely, reliably reach and measure 100% of your workforce? I think with anything we want to do, obviously that reach is foundational. So I'll give you a few minutes to do this. And then we can take a look at the results. Okay, so we have some overachievers. We love that. Can reach and measure 100%. Excellent. Reach but cannot measure. We'll come back to what that really means. Can reach a portion but not all, and not sure. So do you want, Molly, do you have a sense of what you're seeing across the board and if this resonates?
Yeah, absolutely. With all the changes that came with COVID in remote work, some of the challenges were that infrastructures were built to scale, predicting, a certain percentage of the workforce coming in remotely, and then having other ways to communicate with people who were in manufacturing plants, retail offices or stores, just remote areas. And then with COVID, suddenly all the pressure on not only the corporate infrastructure, but the public infrastructure, even just all the providers. So it's been a real challenge. And one of the things that helped us so much was our partnership with SocialChorus, because as we were working with our clients, we could provide some alternatives where you didn't have to force everyone through the VPN, or you didn't have to rely on everybody having access to some of the business enterprise applications that some of the remote workforce wouldn't have access to. But you could still really tie in and leverage the capabilities of those applications where it made sense. And so, people have just had so many years historically, even before COVID, around budget, resource constraints, licenses, devices, who do you provide devices to? And then of course, the big issues of security and privacy, and then integration. So looking at all of those together, this is just such a great way to solve some of those issues, especially right now when it's such a sense of urgency around these things.
And Alexis, did you see any industries with either more urgency or those affected more than others?
Yeah, we've definitely seen that, and it's just so important to be more agile and be able to shift. We've seen some of our clients really struggle. For example, in the hospitality industry, there were decisions and changes being made by the hour, and being able to connect to all of their properties was crucial. But then we've also seen, the industries that have been with the increased demand. So healthcare and pharma, transportation, we've seen them trying to stay on top of everything that's moving so fast. So definitely have seen, different ways it's affected various industries, but yeah, so definitely some more than others.
Okay. And then there's a question coming in. So Molly referenced the SocialChorus platform and the ability to be able to reach people where they are. So that's kind of a core tenet of SocialChorus. So I'll spend 30 seconds just kind of running through for those who are less familiar and thinking about how we can help to close this gap that we've had now that everyone is outside of an office. So one of the things that's been really helpful is to really meet employees where they are. So our deskless employees have always been out and about. Now everyone is out and about, and whether it's on desktop, in web, on mobile, in an email, in a digital signage if you're still on the factory floor, in a Teams, a Salesforce, et cetera, really important to be able to do that. And even if in some locations where you've got to get critical information outside the VPN, the ability to do that really quickly and with agility is critical. Another thing that we've learned, especially in COVID, is the ability to deliver a really personalized experience, one with the content and information, and another one is access to other systems. How do I find out if I'm coming in next week? When is my paycheck coming? It's critical things about pay, in addition to what my colleagues are doing or hearing from leaders. And we've also learned that the importance for those of you who are able to reach 100% of your workforce, it's so important to have one source of truth and one main place to manage all of the content, information, integrations, and connections to services, to meet those employees where they are, be able to manage groups of people, and then customize workflows. So we saw a lot of, quick, this group is being furloughed, we need them to have access to certain things but not others, and really being able to be nimble and robust around managing those profiles, those user groups, and the workflows to get the critical information to the right group. And then, of course, being able to track all of that information. So I think that the vast majority of folks said that even if they could reach people, they weren't sure that they could measure. I think all of us have experience just highlighting the importance of that measurement from a senior leader. How did my message resonate? Where is a gap? And really digging in along departments, locations, class of workers, tenure, to make sure that we're really reaching first. That's the core of driving any other initiative on top of that. So all of that magic, why isn't everyone doing this? So Molly started talking about, a few barriers that people are finding. So we'd want to do another poll and just ask you, if you do not have a way to reach and measure 100% of your workforce, what might be a barrier in that's holding you back? Okay. Did the poll come up, or did I mess it up?
Yeah, no, it's there. It looks like, can you see it now, Nicole? Looks like we have 54% expressed a barrier around getting approval in budget, 30% lack of internal resources. That's no surprise. Fear over security issues, another 30%. Difficulty in aligning internally, 25%. And lots of tools, but low engagement, 21%. And then, of course, we've got 25% with all of the above. So I think no surprises there. I think we're all dealing with similar barriers and issues.
There we go. Okay. And then, Molly, you have a lot of experience just around creating the case for change or a business case. Do you want to walk through some of the key elements as far as that that case for change?
Yeah, absolutely. and every organization is different, how you request new projects, especially technology projects. Some functions within the organization have more experience and are kind of part of that machine. So the first thing is really understanding, what are the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve, getting a really strong executive sponsor. And one of the things in this case where you may be doing something that's an off-cycle kind of budget request, because in a perfect world, we would all go through the annual budget cycle, we put our requests in, get them prioritized, funded, and then execute the next year. But what we're recognizing with some of these employee communications apps is it's such an urgent need that people can't wait for the traditional cycle and have to escalate. So some things we've found that have really helped is having the clear business case of what the benefits are, making strong partnerships across a couple different functions or business units who share the need, and then plugging into whatever the approval cycle is to get the escalated approvals that you need. And one of the things that has worked so nicely with SocialChorus specifically is that with COVID, they put this expedited implementation schedule in place, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that also helps because when you think of the barriers, again, budget, resources, security, being able to lay out how you would address some of those things in the request, in the business case, really helps your case for change and can expedite your request.
Got it. What have you seen worked well? Is there a silver bullet? Everyone wants to know, what's the one thing I can say to 100% get this thing funded?
I'll tell you, it's like arms locked with other C-suite executives. So if you have the CIO, the CHRO, and the head of the corporate communications officer together saying this needs to be a priority, it is so powerful. Because normally, everyone's vying for the same limited resources. And when there's alignment across the organization that something's a priority, you can get it expedited very quickly.
That's great.
Yeah, and I can just build on that. So, Molly, exactly, it's bringing everyone together. And so no matter who's actually driving the initiative, just collaborating with other functions, such as HR or IT, it will not only streamline when the project does get approved and you have to move fast, but what will really help the business case, bringing them in this early, is linking it to the larger strategy, the larger business strategy and goals. So for example, if you are partnering with HR, if you're bringing them in, you can understand their specific pain points, such as communicating to new hires, excuse me, before they start. So a tool like this can really help from the get-go shape their employee experience. And it also can enhance the company's reputation. So, the strategy pillar could be innovation and being digitally savvy. And this is a way where you're accomplishing a specific challenge and also linking to that larger strategy. And so, creating those internal advocates, it definitely, the more people you can bring in, the more you're going to create that alignment and buy-in and excitement before the project has even started. What you're seeing on the screen, for an example, with one of our clients, we helped launch a digital tool. We did a lot of discovery and helping with the business case. And what we did was to help bring stakeholders along and really show that case for change. We created just a simple visual fold out piece that they were able then to take and really easy tell that story about, why is this so important and what are we looking to achieve?
And I think one thing you said that's really important for everyone, it's the immediate need and what can this solve? And then how does it build on our strategic pillars moving forward? Yeah. So I think that example about onboarding, we now need to onboard in a completely different way. I was just talking to one of our customers this morning, and they said, we used to have everyone in a room for 4 hours. That just can't happen anymore. And we cannot have every single person on a WebEx for 4 hours. It just doesn't work. So it's helping to solve an immediate need like onboarding while laddering up to that ongoing strategic initiative around building the employer brand. So I think that that piece is so important when you're thinking about creating the business case and getting other folks involved. And one thing that, Molly, I don't know if you want to talk about just from a CIO standpoint, from an IT and security standpoint, especially now, what are some of the things that are more top of mind for those senior security and IT leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, everyone wants to respond to the request to kind of address the consumerization of IT in large organizations. So we've all heard employees saying, well, you know, in my personal life, I have social and mobile and, you know, all these different capabilities. And why is it so difficult at work? And often there are constraints around security and data privacy. And these things were really escalating even, you know, pre-COVID, and then even more crucial during COVID and then beyond. And so one of the things that helps so much is when you can kind of check all the boxes on the compliance and security side of things. And so that was something that helped us as we were working through with different clients, and we would start to talk to people in enterprise architecture and information security and all these different groups. To have this level of compliance from SocialChorus really expedited our ability to push this through, because there weren't a lot of things that had to be built within the organization, but that it still met the criteria at the very highest level for security and privacy. So those are some barriers that can be just like hitting a brick wall when you're trying to get your project through, and knowing that you have a partner who can provide like the SOC 2 report immediately just really diffuses a lot of those concerns.
Yeah. So one question coming in, I don't know if you guys have an answer, but in the fever pitch moments of COVID, how long did it take to get buy-in from the C-suite? So do you guys have any examples? I have one, but I'll let you take that.
Yeah, we were so surprised. You know, we thought we'd go in, and Alexis will talk about some of the discovery pieces, but we'd go in and really understand the need. We'd start talking, we'd gather up requirements and everything. And then we thought it was going to be a long, arduous procurement process and a search process. And we were able to end to end in 8 weeks, from the moment we started conversations until people were up and running and using data to continually improve. In 8 weeks, we were able to get everything up and running. And Nicole will talk about that. A small part of that was the technology. The technology was stood up in 7 days, which was just astronomical. But it was because as we hit these things that would normally be showstoppers, the team was so well versed. And one thing was funny, when we were in the heat of it, I sent Nicole a note just saying thank you for your team, because there were certain ways of working that also really stood out, where people knew their roles and their expertise so clearly. They were able to align with the internal partners at the client, and they took no time to escalate issues, troubleshoot them, and then even get policy issues decided at the highest level really quickly. So it was a beautiful marriage of our process and SocialChorus's process, and of course, some amazing clients we've been working with.
Yeah. And so I think our fastest one was it was from a Friday night, where an executive reached out to someone on our team and said, we need this right now. We've looked at you before, but now our CEO is saying we need to do it. And I think we had a contract signed by Monday, and it was the following Monday that we were up and live. So I do think that once you see an acute pain, there's nothing like that to mobilize senior executives. There was another question that's related around, do you think it's helpful to find ways to leverage a crisis, whether it's COVID, whether it's racial injustice, to really get executives to say, we must do this now? Do you guys think that that's the way? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, because a lot of these things, you know, like everyone will talk about, like a lot of these technologies are already in place. Some of the conversations have already been had, demos have been seen, but getting just enough inertia to approve the budget, to pull in procurement, like you know, when we talked about the 8 weeks, that includes the entire procurement cycle, all those things that we almost think of as pre-project, that was all inclusive. And I think it's just when you have the urgency, you also have such clear alignment on priorities, and then you can make decisions really quickly. And so one of the things that really helps with that is immediately setting up the right governance so that you have the right people already programmed into the schedule to be able to escalate and make decisions. And where we weren't able to do that in meetings, we were able to set up some other ways that we'll communicate that Alexis is going to talk about a little bit, just so that we could escalate really quickly, just even on a call, having somebody escalate something to adjust a policy, or because that's the other thing, everyone's looking at their policies and finding that some of them are antiquated and not working in this new world, and they're needing to adjust those quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's unfortunate that the crisis happened and that we're going through it, but, you know, there is power in it, and the power is bringing people together. And, you know, in that power bringing people together, it's looking how can we better our organization and better connect and, you know, figure some things out on our end that, you know, what it does bring is it brings that focus. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's something that's needed.
Great. And we will get into some of the planning, and I know there are some questions around how to actually do this, but I do want to call out one of the attendees must have put together an excellent business case. He says the business case should include the impacts of not being able to effectively distribute information to your workforce. Those impacts could include a decrease in role clarity, engagement, productivity, collaboration challenges, loyalty. These are all measurable aspects that can impair business performance. So I think—
Well, and he's so right, because the other thing we found is one of the risks of not doing it is that you can create these like information haves and have nots in your organization, and no one wants that. Where some people are really in the know because they're connected, and other people are kind of out in the dark, and especially right now, that is not a good thing for an organization.
That is correct. Okay, so now that we have prepared this amazing business case, gotten our senior executives involved, we've done it in 7 days. Now, how do we think about planning the project and managing? Alexis, do you want to walk us through some of the things that you've seen recently?
Yeah. So, you know, as we talked about this accelerated timeline that we have, we want to make sure that we're still, you know, a key step is really that taking that time to plan, bringing the right people in, as we've been saying, setting up the project plan. You know, typically in our projects and our initiatives, we do a heavy discovery phase that really helps us get the right insights so we understand from the user's perspective, you know, what we're designing for. But, you know, as we talked about, a recent client of both of ours, you know, implemented SocialChorus in 8 weeks, and the actual technology was 2 weeks. So Nicole, I don't, if you want to get into detail on what that accelerated timeline is.
Yeah, and I think just from our implementing the technology, and obviously this would go hand in hand with what Gagen or others would do on the strategy, but we look at a tech work stream, a strategy work stream, and an education work stream around the platform. So usually this is something that we allow 9 to 12 weeks with the technology enabled after a month. As Molly mentioned, in one of ours, we have, because of COVID, designed an accelerated launch, which gets people live in 5 days. And so to be able to stand up a new platform, a whole way of reaching your entire workforce in a matter of days, I think that's something that, you know, we were just so proud to be able to do to support our clients and help them get mission critical information to their entire workforce. And so that's something that, as we think about being responsive in a crisis situation, the ability to be really agile is key.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, what we found was, while we love to take the time to really get the input and talk to different, you know, stakeholders across the organization, we had to think about what are the different ways that we can bring them along in the journey. And so, just for example, some of the ways we did that was creating collaboration channels where we can, everybody from the, core project team was there, being able to respond and answer questions quickly, daily stand-ups, 15-minute check-ins, just to make sure we're all aligned, and, if there was any critical needs or decisions that had to be made. And then you can always do the quick pulse surveys, or virtual focus groups to, validate some of the decisions that we're making, pulling people in. What really allowed us to do that was building the project management in an agile way. And Molly, you really drove that. So if you want to talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. And as you can see from the way we've been describing how all this works, it's pretty easy to break it into 2-week sprints and then do quick retrospectives, at the end of each sprint. And what's so beautiful about designing it with a core, like minimally viable product, launching it, getting it out there, and then getting some data, is that when you come together for the retrospective, saying, what's working well, what's not working as well as we'd like, and then what do we want to incorporate that we've learned going forward, we have real data immediately to be able to kind of pivot or persevere at that moment. Like, if something's really working, let's do more of that. If something's not working, let's change our approach. And you can do that really iteratively. So while we had kind of the large, long-term project plan, then we broke it into these sprints, and it also enabled our client to experience an agile process while still adhering to some of their maybe a little more traditional ways of working. So it was also for them the fastest implementation they had ever done with software as a service. And it was kind of their first time really working through the agile methodology. And it was a really nice way to teach them and make them comfortable with that, at the same time moving really quickly and giving them the confidence that we can make a decision today. And as we get more information, we can shift and change what that decision is. And the way everything was set up, it was easy enough to do that.
I love that from a tech standpoint, the MVP, the iterating. There's a question around when you dramatically accelerate implementation, you must sacrifice something. And so how do you deal with that in the long term? I think both the answer from the tech and then Alexis on the strategy side would be great.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did is we had worked with the enterprise architecture team, and we had the architecture laid out and the details of like what information we wanted to pull from the HRIS system, how we would use that in SocialChorus to segment the audiences and to address different audiences. So as we learn things, because you're right, the MVP is just like the first, initial launch, and then you want to continually improve the product and modify things over time, especially with the data that you're getting back from the system about what's working and what's not. So we were able to identify the MVP, which were, the must-have features and functionality for day one. But then with these 2-week sprints, you can keep creating a burn down list of the things that are really popping up that are priorities, and make sure you continue to roll those things out over time. And I should mention, we also had a pretty robust change management plan that we were managing. So as we were getting feedback, we could think about what are some of the change management interventions that we could put in place with the next sprint. So it was, what we need to do with the technology, but also there were some things from a change management perspective. And then I'll let Alexis talk about some of the other aspects that we managed through the communications and creative aspects.
Yeah, and so to, think about that question, of course, there are some things that we have to sacrifice, or, we want to be fully planned and prepared when we're going to launch something. It's a little bit of a nerve-wracking thing. So it's this mindset shift of, prototyping, testing, going back and listening, and then ideating from there. It's a little bit of the design thinking methodology where it's okay if we don't have all the answers right away, that, there's a whole process and method to, just get that data to influence how we keep expanding and moving it forward. So I think it's, just the being okay and knowing that this is once it's launched, the process doesn't end. That there's still a lot that needs to continue and be happening, and there's opportunity there then to learn more, and especially from the data and analytics of the people who have already adopted.
Perfect. Great segue. So now that we have put together this amazing business plan, gotten all of our stakeholders, we're up and ready. Now, how do we think through how we get people using this? So Alexis, do you want to talk about some of the work and how you think through about personas?
Yeah, so for effective engagement, a key tool is the persona. And you've heard me talk a lot about, that user experience. And this is something that's going to help you really, put yourselves in their shoes. So with the personas, they can be done, as you see on the screen, in a variety of different ways. But it's really understanding your employee group's different situations. So from their demographic to their location to really their pain points, their needs, their goals, and really what we're finding out now with the uncertainty and things happening in the world, it's really also looking at their emotional state as well. I think empathy is, a crucial piece of, being able to design this tool for the user. And, we use this to influence multiple strategies. So for one is the channel and the content strategy. So understanding, again, with those challenges and pain points, what are employees, what are their areas of interest? What is the information they really need and want? And also what, in their different roles, what is the opportunity for them to even interact with communications and content? So how are they accessing it? So, this is going to influence our channel strategy. And what is great about SocialChorus is it allows for this multi-channel approach. So for example, if you have employees in the field, which, they not only have a laptop, they're not able to even have their phone. So there's critical touch points where, they may be have the opportunity to see a digital signage. And with SocialChorus, you can share that information and target it to the specific roles and where they're going to view it. So, excuse me, I have to take some water. So it's really about helping us figure out how to reach them. And then also with engagement, it's about targeting, as I mentioned before, the right information to the employee. So we're all in information overload, and we want to make sure that what we're sharing is what they're really looking for. So there's different features in the SocialChorus app that can really help them subscribe or opt in, opt out. So that really helps us as we, think about sharing the information and creating these campaigns. Nicole, if you want to talk a little bit about, the site-specific information that's on the screen.
Yeah, and I think one of the things from a persona standpoint, again, it's really about how do we get the right information to the right person in the right digital place at the right time to give them what they need at that moment for the individual worker, and then of course for the business, measure the impact. So one of the things you touched on is the ability to target and segment by group. So as Molly said, pulling the information from the HRIS. And we've just seen with furlough, things are changing by the day, sometimes multiple times a day. And to be able to have a system that works in lockstep and is connected via API to that HRIS, to be able to say which group of workers are in this specific site, what do we need to get them right at this moment? Let's make sure we get it to them. And let's go further and let's make sure that they have accepted or acknowledged something that we need them to. So whether it's compliance, whether it's health and safety related, with COVID, we've just seen so many additional opportunities where we need to target and retarget and really make sure that employees understand and can acknowledge things. And again, to get that reporting back to the organization, we've really seen that's become critical.
Yeah, and there's also, when you're thinking about driving behaviors, and as we talked about before, creating the opportunity to share feedback. And so giving them, the ability to, comment or like, or if, there's open channels for them to share their information, that's a really key symbol as we're looking to drive a more transparent and open culture. That's really great about this tool.
Yeah. And then Alexis, when we think about introducing something new, especially in an accelerated standpoint, kind of what else do you do to create awareness? Like you said, we're already overwhelmed and we're introducing something new. Can you give some examples of what's worked well?
Yeah, so again, with the personas, it's getting to that core of what they're looking for, what's in it for them. And what I, really get excited about, I love the planning part, but, the engagement and adoption and, building that excitement around the tool is something that I am really passionate about. And so one of the ways is through the messaging and communications when it's launched or even before it's launched. So building that momentum, creating some sort of visual teasers. You'll see on the screen, for a client of ours, they were creating this tool to really answer a couple three pillars. So working smarter, inspiring, and staying connected. So we used playful language. We used bold graphics, to ask those questions, which we know that they were already looking for. And so it's, catching their attention, saying how this tool is really going to benefit them and give them what they're looking for.
Super. And then there were some questions just about how, kind of best practices for engagement in general, especially now. I wanted to share one of the ways that one of our clients used at Ohio State University Medical Center. They shared day in the life in 6 words. So they chose, how can we connect our team in this information overload? Choose 6 words. And it became something that really picked up. And you have to think about choosing your 6 words carefully, but it was something that from the senior leaders to everyone on the floor, really participating and being a part of the culture. So Alexis, do you want to talk about just the opportunity to build culture in these times as well?
Yeah, I think a key thing that you said there too was mentioning leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So, in these times, people are really looking to their employers as that source of truth. And so, being able to directly hear from your leadership, from the top to your direct manager, I think is really important. And it's something that's going to pull employees in because, they're looking for that. They're looking for that guidance. They're looking for, their thoughts on situations that are happening. So I think making sure leaders are bought in, that they're engaged in some format or another, if they have their own channel, if they're responding back to employees' questions, I think is a really powerful way to engage employees.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I pulled this up. So this is Archer Daniels Midland, who's another one of our customers, and their CEO Juan, and he's on a regular cadence of speaking directly to the employee base via video. Just like you said, Alexis, he'll answer 2-way questions. We have several different and increasing number of CEOs who are active. I think especially started in COVID, then with racial injustice, and just so many critical messages that employees need to hear directly from their leaders. And this is a perfect way to make that happen, and even help some of that change management inside of the company as far as leaders being more transparent and being more authentic. And then Molly, have you seen, just from an IT standpoint, does this help or unlock any additional things that CIOs are trying to solve as far as a digital workplace, or accelerating the digital transformation that they're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. In several ways. One, marrying these various disciplines together around creative and user experience, design thinking, and technology is really powerful in so many ways. And we were talking about, just tying the business case together with the business strategy. So the need for this app with the business strategy. And with a lot of our clients, we work closely with the transformation office or the chief transformation officer to understand what their transformation goals are. And then within the digital transformation, a lot of people are implementing the concept of a digital workplace, which is very much tied to culture. So just like your physical workplace is a big symbol and in a way that you try to bring your culture to life, if your digital workplace can do the same, then that promise when you've hired someone about the kind of company you are, the talent brand that you've expressed, and then their actual experience can be very consistent. So if, for example, you say you're an agile tech-forward company and they come in and all the tools are antiquated, difficult to use, disjointed, they don't have that experience. So from that perspective, it's really helpful. And then also just on a very tactical thing, being able to use these personas and creative ideas to build out the test cases can help expedite the acceptance of the system. So as we're trying to accelerate the implementation, the personas really helped us create use cases, and then we took the use cases and put those right into test plans. And we can continue to do that over time as we add additional functionality. So you don't have to have a big test process.
Yeah. And Molly, there was actually a couple questions came in around understanding working around the VPN. So can you explain maybe the challenge, and then being able to get around that and using SocialChorus?
Yeah, absolutely. So a VPN is a virtual private network. Most large organizations require people who are outside the physical network to access their applications and servers and everything through a VPN tunnel, they call it. And what that does is it's another layer of security. There's a concept called defense in depth, and it provides some of that additional security to get in. Because the expectation was that companies knew how many people are likely to be coming in remotely, they buy a certain number of licenses. There's a certain bandwidth that's part of that architecture and everything. And when COVID happened, all of a sudden they had to grossly expand the bandwidth, the licenses, and to do that, they had to add some equipment. And because there were so many supply chain challenges, sometimes even if you could get the approval to buy the equipment, you couldn't physically receive the equipment fast enough. And that's why being able to communicate with the employees through SocialChorus, because it's secure and it's running on a different network on your devices, you can still secure everything and feel good about what you're providing to the employees, but you don't have to run them through the virtual private network. I hope that made some sense to our listeners.
quicker time to market and reaching the hardest to reach that might not be able to tunnel in. So again, really focus on how do we reach 100% of the workforce with that information in a timely, targeted fashion. So one interesting question, Alexis, I'll ask you this one. Are there any standout stories of something that surprised you about a rollout, or creative ways that people started using the platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times we've seen, I don't know if there's a specific story that I have off the top of my head, but one of my favorite ways to get people to start using it right away is the different types of contests that you can create. Whether it's selfie contests, or naming contests. I've seen our clients launch tools without a name and giving that opportunity to the employees to really shape that. And I think now with everyone, most of us working from home, I think there's a lot of connection that can be built about your home situation. So, sharing your different workspaces, really providing that space for employees to connect personally as well as professionally.
Yeah.
But Alexis, I think we had a few clients where we were surprised about how people lined up to create their own channels and wanted to own channels and really get involved, where we were worried we'd have trouble getting adoption. And it was actually the opposite. We were trying to keep up with demand.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is being prepared for that too, right? Thinking about your larger communication strategy and business strategy of what channels are you going to include, what makes sense. You want people to be excited about and want their own channel, but there's also a lot of information and thought that needs to go into how to drive that channel and keep it engaging and having that right content. The other thing that we've seen a lot too is the different types of content you can post. So bite-sized videos to snackable content, infographics, really visual pieces is something that you can use. And it's something that people are used to. They're used to social media outside of work. So it's just bringing that experience inside as well, which, I think that helps with engagement and adoption as well.
Yeah. Okay, we are flooded with questions, which is awesome. So I'll run down a few. There's yes, Okta integration. So if any of the big tech players, easy to integrate. That's one of the kind of our foundation. We're also Switzerland, so we work with everyone, sending information to, pulling information from. So there are other questions about ServiceNow. Yes, we can work within the ServiceNow container. We integrate with ServiceNow. A couple questions around, does this augment the intranet? Does it replace an intranet? We frankly have seen our clients do both. And I think, as Molly talked about, this ever-evolving digital workplace, it really is, you've got to meet your employees where they are. You've got to get them targeted, personalized information and a way to do that. So in some instances, we've become, or the SocialChorus platform has become, that employee landing page. So the first place where people go, AT&T and Boeing and J.Crew come to mind. Others, we can send information into either a SharePoint container, a ServiceNow container. We're doing that at MGM and Whirlpool and others. And so this notion of really being able to be flexible to reach 100% of the workforce, we've seen in COVID, is critical and will continue to be key moving forward. Okay, now let's see. How do we keep, a lot of questions about how do you drive engagement, keep people engaged over time? So maybe Alexis, do you want to talk about, we have the initial buzz, everyone's excited. How do you continue kind of 2 years in to make sure that people are still engaged fundamentally with the culture and the content?
Yeah, so I think it's keeping that close, pulse on your employee organization. So there are the poll feature that you have inside SocialChorus. There's surveys that you can share and ask, key questions to help you understand what our employees really looking for. I think the content, and then also using this to solve some of the challenges that come up. So, you know, when it was launched to a year later, there's going to be new situations and new challenges. So just making sure you're staying on top of it and then using this as a part of the solution, I think is really important to keep engagement over time. Yeah, I don't know, Molly.
And I would just add having strong governance and making sure that you resource this properly so that you keep focus over the long term. So the content is constantly refreshed and renewed and worth engaging with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what we continually find is just the constant to be able to use data to drive your decisions, to iterate. For the first time, we have a real-time pulse on the organization. There are some questions around, you know, does video work better than written? And yes, we find that video does perform 3 times better than others, but for some segments of the population, it doesn't. And so being able to understand this factory in this part of the world doesn't like video or doesn't respond well, and being able to have a way to target that employee population with a different type of communication that best suits them. I think that's really the opportunity that we'll see, and to be able to have automation and intelligence that are critical to drive that, because there's no way that it can be a manual process to get to that level of personalization.
Yeah, there's just so many opportunities to test too and to learn from that data. So if a specific post did really well, there was a lot of engagement around it, you know, then you're able to take a look at what did that have, who did that go to, and try it again and see if the engagement level was the same. If it wasn't, you know, then you spend the time and you kind of look and you know, replicate certain parts of it so that, you know, you're learning along the way. There's not always like this direct answer, but you have the data to, you know, influence what you do next and then react according to what the data tells you.
Perfect. Molly, one final thought. We have 1 minute left, and there are a ton of questions. We will follow up to those of you specifically who we know who it is, and then again, we're all open to answering questions as well. But Molly.
So one thing I would say is when you go to ask for this, a lot of people say we've spent millions of dollars on these enterprise systems, and the way that this kind of fills the hole or the gap in your architecture is very impressive and still leverages those investments. So it's not instead of, it's in collaboration with those other investments.
Okay. With that, so Molly, Alexis, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to everyone who participated. And again, look forward to continuing the conversation. It's never been so important to reach every single member of our workforce and be able to engage them. So thank you, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks, everyone.